Chauvin found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. His bail immediately revoked. He was put in handcuffs and taken to jail. The judge says sentencing will be held in about 8 weeks. What might he face? Here are the sentencing guidelines for the state of Minnesota. The second-degree murder charge carries up to 40 years in prison, up to 25 years for the third-degree murder charge, and up to 10 years for the second-degree manslaughter charge.
And Jamie, the jury reviewed 3 weeks of testimony from 45 witnesses. The jury was made up of 6 white jurors and 6 black or multiracial people, 7 women, 5 men. It took them less than a day to reach the guilty verdicts, and they had no questions for the judge, and they asked for no papers to be read back.
And here was the reaction outside the courtroom. Lots of emotion today. Hundreds gathering there in the streets of Minneapolis to hear the verdict. You hear the cheers as those verdicts were announced. We heard from one woman who said she now feels a sense of relief.
I am so grateful to God. I'm so happy. I'm so glad we got this. We needed this. The country needed this. The world needed this. It's not a black or white issue. It's a human rights issue, and we need to see change.
Minneapolis has been a city on edge. More than 3,000 members of the Minnesota National Guard are deployed in the city as that verdict was being announced.
And Jamie, before the verdict came down, our Derek Russell talked with Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden. Sheriff McFadden says he is giving advice to the sheriff in Minneapolis. McFadden is telling him what has worked in Charlotte during protests and unrest here. McFadden talked with WBTV's Derek Russell about that conversation, the concern other sheriffs now have, and the plan for the Queen City. Derek, we really saw all of the emotion outside the Hennepin County Government Center still unfolding right now. Those emotions are certainly felt all across the country, much different because everyone obviously overjoyed there with the verdict. What did the sheriff say about those plans for the evening ahead and the advice he gave?
Well, Maureen, I can tell you, I just got off the phone just a short time ago with Sheriff McFadden, and he told me that he believes that the prosecution presented a strong case. He has been in talks with the sheriff in Minneapolis. He said that that sheriff has been very overwhelmed, but today that sheriff is probably breathing a sigh of relief, but the sheriff says the work still continues.
We're supporting the sheriff in Minneapolis. You know, I've had probably about 5 conversations with him.
And the advice given when dealing with protesters?
Be consistent, be seen, and always have that time to have a conversation. Have the conversation during the night, have that conversation during the day, and pick up that phone and have the conversation with people that you would normally not have a conversation with.
Sheriff Gary McFadden is on the executive board of the organization called Major County Sheriffs of America. He is the Region 4 leader. He represents law enforcement in nearly 20 states. He spoke with sheriffs just this week about what could happen in their areas if people are not pleased with the Chauvin verdict. He was told this past weekend 40 major cities experienced violence because of the trial.
And you know, we're living on the edge because we still have a lot of violence in America during this time.
The sheriff says officers and deputies can't control the verdict. He says what they can do is stay in contact with protest leaders and ask the community for their assistance.
If you hear a group saying they're going to do this and they're going to do that, we need to know. We need to try to counter that, or we need to try to slow it down. And
McFadden says protesters are screaming for change when it comes to social justice. He believes it will take everybody working together to please the protesters.
But I've seen a little bit of change, but not the change that we need to be safe and sound in our community. So we do need a bigger change, but I haven't seen that bigger change yet.
And Sheriff McFadden hopes that change happens sooner rather than later. Now, the sheriff tells me that he does expect there should be celebration in the streets, but he is saying after that celebration is over, what happens next? His last piece of advice is telling the sheriff, if you don't know what to do, you can always listen. Live in West Charlotte, Derek Russell, WBTV, on your side.
Our Derek Russell live there, and some more here, Derek, on this conversation. Mecklenburg County Sheriff McFadden also gave a statement after the verdict came in, saying in part, while the system worked to hold Chauvin accountable for his criminal actions, we know the decision will never return Mr. Floyd to his family, friends, and community. At the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, we believe in the sanctity of life and treating everyone with dignity and respect. We have a moral responsibility to protect people in our custody from harm. And as the verdict was read, Chief Johnny Jennings with CMPD tweeted a statement. It reads, quote, "We respect the jury's decision and their commitment to justice. The trial has concluded, but the work involving responsible police reform must continue. Only by engaging in continued constructive dialogue can law enforcement and community members strengthen relationships that are at the heart of safe communities. It will require a commitment from all of us."